Mimer is an interesting mimer because the Rebbe is going to combine or take a lesson from two Mamorim of the Alter Rebbe in Likutei Torah and Lidodi. There's the classic one that's the very well-known one, which is the Lidodi about Melech Basada and so on. Then there's another mimer, instead of just being titled Lidodi V'Doidi Li, it also adds Anila Doidi V'Doidi Li, the rest of the pasuk in Shir Hashirim, Haroya B'Shashanim, the one that goes out to graze amongst the roses. And the Rebbe is going to explain about what the meaning of the order is and why, what the difference between the messages of these two Mamorim and how they complement each other. In Yeshiva, both Mamorim were learned at this time of day, at this time of year, Elul, but the more well-known one, I believe, even outside of Chabad circles, is the first one about Melech Basad. Okay, let's begin. It's a mimer from Tuesday, Parshas Shoftim, the first day of Rosh Chodesh El. Adila Doidi V'Doidi Li, I am to my beloved, and my beloved is to me. In Likutei Torah, Yeshnei Drushim Bas Chol Hazu. In Likutei Torah, there are two Mamorim. In the terminology of the Rebbe refers to Mamorim in Mamorim, the Rebbe refers to Mamorim as Drushim, like the word Medrash. That begin with this title of Anila Doidi V'Doidi Li. Harisha Maschal Anila Doidi V'Doidi Li Rosh Tevis El. The first mimer in Likutei Torah on Anila Doidi V'Doidi Li says the following phrase. The title of the mimer is Anila Doidi V'Doidi Li is Rosh Tevis El. And then the Alter Rebbe goes on, and he explains Teichen and Yonish Alel, the content of the matter of Elul, Shu Kemosh LaMelech, Besada V'chulu. It's analogous to a king in the field, etc. The whole analogy and the metaphor that he brings over there. Vasheni Maschil, the second mimer following that, begins with the fuller pasuk in Shir Hashirim, V'anila Doidi V'Doidi Li Haroy B'Shashanim. I am to my beloved is to me, that grazes and goes out to pasture amongst the roses. In the second mimer as well, the Alter Rebbe explains, like in the first mimer, the idea of the illumination of the 13 attributes of mercy that shine in the month of El. And he explains that in this second mimer, he connects the 13 attributes of mercy to the idea of going to pasture amongst the roses. Just like a rose has 13 petals, so too it's the 13 attributes of mercy as well that have 13. Like there's a book out by Rabbi Steinsaltz called the 13-petaled rose. And the Alter Rebbe also adds to this point about the 13 attributes. He adds another and explains at length another hint in these roses, in the number 13 of the petals of a rose. It corresponds to the 13 attributes that the Torah is studied, and we derive the hermeneutics, all the ways how we derive halachas from Chumash. There's a list of 13 principles. It's called Yud Gimel Midos. In the Siddur, it's printed right before Haidu. Amid Rabbi Shmuel, he speaks about the 13 Midos and different types of ways how halachas are derived from the Chumash. Shezau Inyan Sheshanim, that this also has to do with a rose. Not just it has to do with a rose because the number 13, that there's 13 petals of a rose and there's 13 attributes of, 13 principles of Torah derivation, but also the word Sheshanim can be flipped around. Al Tikra Sheshanim, do not read it Sheshanim, meaning roses, Ella Sheshoinim, but rather that they are studying or reviewing by halachas. They are reviewing and studying halacha, like the word Mishnah from the word Mishnayos. Limud Torah, the study of Torah. So even though there are certain common themes in the two Mamorim, but the Rebbe points out, but in this mimer, the second mimer of the Alter Rebbe, mashmit protei hamashal de Melech Basada, he leaves out the details of the metaphor and analogy of a king in the field. He just says the 13 attributes of mercy shine. Second paragraph, V'yesh levayer hemshech hadrushim. We could explain the continuation of the Mamorim, why they go in this particular order. First, the Maimer that speaks about Melech Basada, and then the Maimer that speaks about Torah study. Shem k'may klal prat, it's like a general thing, a rule, a principle, and then the details that result from that generality. In the first Maimer, it's explained the rule, the point of what El is about, which is from the mashal of Amalek Basada, from the metaphor of the king in the field. We know what is the point, the general idea of what El is about. In the second Maimer, it's explained the specifics of the avodah that we're supposed to do in the month of El. Included in the details of the avodah, what we're supposed to do in the month of El is Torah study. Just like it's in all matters of the Torah. First they begin as a point, and afterwards they become detailed into details of the different aspects. Now, by the way, since the I don't know if since, but the importance of Torah study is the subject of the second Maimer the Alter Rebbe. What is the example that the Rebbe is going to bring for the concept of Klal Prat? He's going to bring from Torah itself. That Torah itself works that way as well, in a way of that things are given in a general way, and then they're broken down to detail. An example for this matter is from the Ten Commandments. Initially, it's all one point. I'm sorry, I went back a line. In the Aser Sadibris is included, on the entire Torah is included in the Ten Commandments. The Chazal say on the pasuk about how the Aseres Hadibros were inscribed upon the luchas, upon the tablets. It says from this and from that they are written. So on this pasuk, the Chazal say Shekol inyani HaTorah, all matters of the Torah, all subjects of the Torah, everything in the Torah. Afilu masher talmid vasik asu l'chadish, even what a diligent student will come up with a new insight in the future. Hakoil nichol basar sadibris, all of it was included in the Ten Commandments. So we see this idea of klal and prat. The aser sadibris is the klal, the general thing, the all-inclusive point, and everything else are the details that come out from it. Yes, and even more so, in the Aser Sadibris itself, all the rest of the Aser Sadibris are all included in the first one of Anoich Hashem Elokecha. In addition to this, even that first Dibur, that first one of the Ten Commandments, is all included in the first word of the Ten Commandments, in the word Anoichi. Like it's also understood from what the Chazal state. Anoichi Rosh Tevis, Ano Nafshi Ksovis Yehovis. I have myself written in myself into the Torah, and I have given this over to you. That's what the Rosh Tevis of the word Aleph Nun Chof Yud, Ano Nafshi Ksovis Yehovis. The koyal kol Torah kula, meaning the word anoichi is referring, I am writing myself and giving myself to you, meaning the entire Torah that's being written and being transmitted is being transmitted, all included in the word anoichi. Shekula nichlalos ba'anoichi, all of it is included in the word anoichi. V'yesh lahoisef oid, we can even add even more. Not only is the entire Torah included in the Ten Commandments, not only is the Ten Commandments included all in the first Dibur. Not only is the first Dibur included in the first word of Anoichi, which includes the entire Torah then, but even more so, even the first letter, the letter Aleph. It's known the reason why is the beginning of the entire Torah with the letter Beis of the word Bereshis, Mishum Shu Rosh Tevis Bracha, because the Beis is Rosh Tevis for the word Bracha, blessing. But Bracha is also from the meaning of Hamshacha and drawing down. As we know, that's what the idea of a blessing is. We're drawing down power and energy from above. Well, according to this, we could say, the Zel Kefisha Torah, he ba'ofen shel Hamshacha. This is the way the Torah, the letter base of Bereshis, is the way the Torah is in the way of being drawn down. That's why it comes down with the letter base, indicating bracha, because bracha, as I just now mentioned, means drawing down, bringing something down. As opposed to where it's included in the first letter of Aser Sadibris, Hareza Ois Aleph Davke. Aser Sadibris is specifically the letter Aleph, not the letter base. Why? What's the significance of it being in the beginning with the letter Aleph? Ki ba'aser sadibris, ki af shegam zehu inyan shalam shachi yahavis, although Aser Sadibris is also about being drawn down, because we just now said, Anon nafshik sovs yahavis. I wrote myself into the Torah, Hashem says, and I transmitted it to you. So it's also Hamshacha. If it's also Hamshacha, maybe it should have begun with the letter Beis, which stands for Bracha, and Bracha means Hamshacha. Aval hanimshach b'hamshacha zuhu nafshi. What the important thing over here is that what came down in this Hamshacha is myself. Hashem gave himself, and even more so, it's I, my very I-ness, Hashem transmitted to us. So therefore, it was necessary for it to begin with the letter Aleph, with the letter Aleph stands for the word Ana, indicating Hashem's very essence that's being transmitted here in the Torah. Based on this example, how the Aleph of Aser Sadibris includes the entire Torah, as we worked our way back, the Torah is included in the 10 is included in the 1 is included in the Anochi, and the Anochi is included in the Aleph. So in a similar vein, this Klal Uprat type of way of doing things is also reflected in the two Mamorim of the Alter Rebbe on the month of El of Anil Doidi V'Doidi Li. Second paragraph on the page. So too we can say the explanation in the order of these two above mentioned Mamorim. In the first Maimer, the matter is explained about Elul, the month of Elul, just as one point, because that's the way a klal works. That's why a general thing works. You start off at one point, which is Mashla Melch Basad. It's the metaphor of the king in the field. The Rebbe says we could add specifically that this analogy in this metaphor is the first Maimer. Why specifically was there given for this a metaphor from a physical thing? Specifically from a king and from the inhabitants of the city that are going out towards him. An analogy that has to do with the ultimate division, that there's all these different people involved and they're all coming together and so on. So the Rebbe says, like it's known, that Tzemach Tzedek and Mittler Rebbe explain, as he notes in the parentheses, that the more simple something is at its source, the more undefined something is on its source, the more it can expand into many, many aspects. There's a mashal for this that's brought down, that there's like one pure candlelight that is not defined, because just light of a candle, but it finds itself in every corner of the room. It goes into every nook and cranny, because the more refined, the more simple, the more non-complex something is, the greater its details that it comes out. So the idea that the Alter Rebbe brings a mashal from a physical thing that comes into this multiplicity of the many people in the city coming together to the king and all the details of the mashal and so on. This multiplicity actually indicates its essential, pure, non-adulterated type of source. Skip the parentheses. And afterwards, from this general thing, it comes out into details in the first mimer itself. But primarily when we're dealing with the second mimer of the Alter Rebbe, through Torah study with the 13 principles that the Torah can be derived from, that's how the oral Torah is revealed from the way it's concealed in the written Torah. The 13 principles of hermeneutics, of how do we have to study Torah, helps us find the meaning in the halachas, or in the statements that it says in the written Torah, to be able to apply it in the revealed way that was concealed, all these different halachas we had in the parsha last week. All it says is not to cook a kid in its mother's milk. What about eating it together? What about deriving benefit from it if it's been cooked together, etc.? So it's only by the different rules of the 13 principles that we know how to apply this halacha and reveal the Torah Sheval Peh, the oral Torah from the written Torah. That the revelation of the oral Torah, as it's extracted from the hidden meaning within the written Torah, is through these 13 principles. Until through these 13 principles we come to actually be able to fulfill the mitzvahs, which the greatness of Torah study is not just to study the Torah and to study the 13 principles and to know how we derive from the written Torah the halachas, but the ultimate thing is to be able to bring it down to practice. A third paragraph on the page. According to what's we explained earlier, that the content and how these two mamorim work together is like a point, and then all the details that are derived from the point, klal prat, the general and the details. Yesh loymar, we could say, shesiu madrush hasheni hu haklal vas hachakel she'acharei hapratim. After you have the general thing, I think even the Rebbe mentioned this maybe somewhere in Sicha Maimer, but let's say when you deliver a talk, so they say the best way to deliver a talk is first to give an overview, then to go into details, and then at the conclusion of the talk, you sum it up and you bring it out to the point. So you're starting off with a point, a klal, a nekuda, then you're going into details, pratim, and then you conclude it with a point. So the Rebbe was saying that the first Maimer of Anil Doidi and the second Maimer of Anil Doidi is klalim and is a klal and the pratim, the nekuda, the point, and then the second Maimer is all the details. But at the end of the second Maimer, there is the point that sums it all up. So he says, again, second line in the last paragraph, that the conclusion of the second mimer is the general concept and the sum total that follows all the details. We could say this is the reason why the second mimer concludes with the topic of Simchas Torah. The celebration of Simchas Torah, specifically one day, Bechinas Nekuda. It's a point. Despite the fact that it's one point, it's built upon all the details before it. It comes after all the specific service and all the details of everything we did before, Elul, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, Sukkot, etc., as he's going to enumerate. Therefore, Simchas Torah is connected to Shmini Atzeres. It's not standing on its own. It's connected to Shmini Atzeres, and it's connected to all the Yom Tovim that preceded it. Simchas Torah includes all the topics of the Torah that were studied throughout the entire cycle of the year prior to that, Because it's the conclusion of the Torah. That's the conclusion of the Torah. Again, just like the conclusion of the Tumah Morim, the conclusion of the Torah is the point that includes everything that we studied the entire year. So not just a Simchas Torah, a conclusion and a point of the Yom Tovim that we just passed, but it's the entire Torah study of the entire year. When Nimtza comes out, Shabbat Yom Echad Simchas Torah, Klal, in the one day of Simchas Torah, which is the general level, Nichlalim Kol Proti Avodah the Chol Hashanas, include all the details of the Avodah of the entire year, not just what took place in Tishrei. The Rebbe says this type of approach of starting off with a point, going into details, and concluding with a point, we find this also in the idea of davening. It's appropriate to say prior to davening, I am accepting upon myself the positive commandments of loving your fellow as yourself, which is how we begin davening, how we're supposed to start off davening, literally like yourself. That is the point that comes prior to the details. And afterwards comes the details of the davening. Afterwards comes the sum total and the conclusion of the davening. But the tzaddikim will praise your name, and the straight ones will settle and live with your face. When is this referring to? The Koyal Gula Mitzvah Shleim. It's referring to the time of the true and complete redemption. The Ba'ofen, the Es Panecha, in such a manner of with your face. Pnei Elai v'chaneni, as we say, turn to me and do favor upon me. U'metech simcha ha'peretzes kol hagdorim, and out of a joy that breaks through all barriers. Kivin shal simcha de simchas Torah. He bechinas niles b'yoser kanal. Since the joy of Simchas Torah is the most highest type of joy, lachein hi nimshechas lamata ma'asaret tfachim ad lirika beraglaim. Therefore, the joy of Simchas Torah is distinct of any other joyous occasion. That joy of Simchas Torah is something that impacts and reaches all the way to the lowest level, even to dancing with the feet. Like the well-known aphorism of my father-in-law, of the Frierdiker Rebbe, Shemitzvahs hayoim besimcha. The mitzvah of the day of Simchas Torah is with simcha, because every Yom Tov has has a common denominator with all the other Yom Tovim, and then there's every Yom Tov's unique mitzvah. Most Yom Tovim have its unique mitzvah. Rosh Hashanah's unique mitzvah is blowing the shofar. Yom Kippur's unique mitzvah is tshuva. Sukkot has a double unique mitzvah, which is the sukkah and the lulav, etc., etc. What is the mitzvah of Simchas Torah? So the Frierdiker Rebbe said the mitzvah of the day of Simchas Torah is joy. V'hainu lo yirak simcha b'shir v'simcha lo yain, not just simcha with singing, and not just joy with wine. That the Chazal say ein simcha elo b'yayin, that the true simcha is only over wine. Elo simcha nimshechas baraglayim, the type of joy that Simchas Torah has, more so than any other type of joy in any other Yom Tov, is a simcha that comes down into the feet. Ad la'akiv shebaraglayim, until even the heels of the feet, the soles of the feet, shal yodei roikid kol haguf, through the heels and the soles, the entire body dances. From this general thing, we said Simchas Torah is the conclusion point, the klal that follows all the details preceding it. From the joy of Simchas Torah, from that general idea of Simchas Torah, comes down for all the rest of the days of the year. The Torah study throughout the rest of the years with great joy. Ad l'simcha ba'ofen the mefazim mecharker b'chol ois, in such a way, to such a type of joy, like David HaMelech says, when he brought the Aron back into Yerushalayim, he was dancing and jumping and hopping with all of his might. Like the Rambam writes, as halach at the conclusion of the laws of lulav, which is the conclusion of the Tishrei halachas, is that section. In the Rambam, the Rambam writes over there that it's a very great service of Hashem, the service of Hashem out of joy. V'ad shemevin, until to such degree he brings as a proof. Shekain hoisan hogis David Malch Mashiach. This is the way David HaMelech acted from that pasuk that we just now quoted, that David would hop and skip and dance with great joy. This means the Rambam means to say that simcha has to be with all the mitzvahs, not just on Simchas Torah we're happy and then the rest of the year we go back to doing the mitzvahs without any excitement. No, from Simchas Torah we bring that passion, that joy in every mitzvah throughout the year. Including and specifically when we come to general mitzvahs and primary mitzvahs, how much more so they have to be done with joy. So now the Rebbe brings it full circle, now back to El. From Simchas Torah we learn to be joyous all the way throughout the entire cycle of the year. How much more so we have to be joyous in the Avodah of the month of El. The month of accounting for the previous year. So one counting, oh no, you get scared. So the Rebbe says just the opposite. Even the avodah of El, where the person is making an accounting of what went on the last year, it's also has to be out of a great joy. Because when he makes a true and righteous accounting, so he repairs and fills all deficiencies and anything that was lacking. And not just does he fill what was lacking, and he adds even more perfection to his service, not just filling up what was missing. That his service to Hashem should not just be in a way that he's filling what his needs are, like it says by a poor person that you have an obligation to fill his needs. If he was used to having a horse to ride on, you're supposed to get it for him, but there's something else, alabai from the la'ashrei. You don't have to make the poor person rich, but the way the person does when he does tshuva and he makes a cheshbon nefesh out of joy, not only does he fill what's lacking, what's needing, what the person is needy in spiritually, but he does so in a way of adding, in a way of riches, going above and that what he did before. That is the purpose of the true calculation, the true accounting of last year. It's not meant that when we're making an accounting of last year to fall into depression and do less. It's just the opposite. We make an accounting to do more and to add an increase in our avodah. In all matters of service, when many Yidden get together, so then that adds more energy in the avodah than if I would have been doing this on my own to inspire myself to do more avodah. Now, like we said before, it's appropriate to say before davening, I accept upon myself the positive commandments of loving my fellow as myself. So therefore, we're all joined together, and this energizes me in my avodah that I'm able to do so much more than if I would be doing this alone. The Rebbe concludes with this paragraph on the page, through speaking about and taking a lesson from all of this, especially through doing this in actuality. How much more through the avoid of the month of El, in such a way that search out my face. Your face, Hashem, I will search. The avoid of the essential part of the soul, the Yichida Shebenefesh. That is what we're referring to when we say in L'David Hashem Oidi, that Panai, that you should see and reveal the Yichida, my Pnimius, the innermost level. From this we come to what it says in the L'David Hashem Oidi. We say, Havaya Hashem is Oidi, is my light and my salvation. So the Chazal say, and it's explained, why do we say this Perek and Tillim throughout Elul until after all the way into Tishrei? Because Oiri is by Rosh Hashanah. Oiri is referring on the day of Rosh Hashanah, Hashem manifests His light to us. V'yishi, and the fact that He saves us from all negative things is B'Yom Kippurim. Ki tzpeneni b'sukai is another pasuk in L'David Hashem Oiri. He will hide me in His shelter, but Sukkos, it's referring to Sukkos. Ad Lasim Chag HaSukkos, until the conclusion of the Yom Tov of Sukkos, Simchas Torah, which is the Yom Tov of Simchas Torah. So through that Memarim, we speed up Shiskaim Keharafayim should become fulfilled in an eye blink. Masha Oimrim, what we say, T'ka b'shever Godel Cheruseinu, blow with your great shofar, for our freedom, we say in Rosh Hashanah davening, Cherus b'pashtus u'b'tachsa shleimus, literal freedom in the ultimate way. U'kemoi b'birchas koyanim, just like in the bracha of the koyanim. Shehi ba'ofen da'ad meheira yaretz dvaritz, in such a way that speedily his words will rush. That's the accomplishment of the bracha of the koyanim. The koyanim's purpose is to make that it should come down, the bracha should come down quickly. Because koyanim give over, they are transmitting Hashem's bracha. It's not their own bracha that they are saying. Like it's ruled in Halach and Shulchan, therefore every kohen can give a bracha because it's not his bracha. You don't need a tzaddik to give the bracha. Any kohen can give the bracha because he's just a channel and a vehicle for Hashem's bracha. Until it becomes the pasuk that says after Yivarecha, Hashem says Ani Avarachem, that I in actuality am the one that's benching them. And then the final page in the Maimer, Va'ani v'loy ikvan afilu keheref ayin, he did not delay them even an eye blink. Begula mitzvah shleima ayde achida klal shekol der kuloi, in the true and complete redemption through the general Yechida, which we know Mashiach is the general Yechida of the entire generation. Should be the will of Hashem, through speaking about all these matters. All of this should be in the literal sense, below 10 handbreadths, in 1 hour and 1 moment. It should be Hashem is my light and Hashem is my salvation, b'chol hapratim, in all the specifics and all the details, and especially in the most general thing and the most specific thing and the most internal thing, until the innermost level of the innermost level, it comes down here and is revealed down here below 10 handbreadths. It also becomes revealed in all matters of the world. That the entire world will be in such a state where Hashem will become this glory becomes revealed, and all flesh will see together that the mouth of Hashem spoke. And from him comes about the entire chain order of descent in all matters in the world. And we'll see how the world is coming into being every single moment from total and complete nothingness, mamish. Like it's explained in Shariach Dvamunah of the Alter Rebbe and Tanya. And from the matters, the way they are in Torah, comes the matter in the simple sense. Below 10 handbreadths in the simple sense. That we see all of this with eyes of flesh. In 1 hour, 1 moment, mamash, literally so.